Okay, Assalamu alaikum in a new class for us after going through the Old English, talking about Beowulf, and after that moving to the Middle Ages, the medieval ages, in which we considered Geoffrey Chaucer and one of his tales in the Canterbury Tales. Now we will move on to another era in the Middle Ages literature, which is called the early Tudor period from 1485 to 1555. In this video, inshallah, we will go through a background for this era, and then we will focus on poetry. Okay, so let's start with the the background. So the century following the death of Chaucer saw the upheaval and bitter turmoil which tore England apart and resulted in a civil war over rulership between the aristocratic houses of Lancaster and of York. So there were two families, noble families. They were fighting, and that caused a civil war in England after the death of Chaucer. This feud means a long-standing fight between two families, was called the War of the Roses. They called it the War of the Roses because each family had a rose with different color as a symbol for this family. So we had the red rose for the Lancaster family, and we had the white rose for the York family. Okay, the family from Lancaster and the family from York. Okay, and that war began in 1455 and ended in 1485 when Henry Tudor came to the throne as Henry the seventh, and married Elizabeth of York, thus uniting the two houses. So the civil war that was caused by two major families ended with the marriage of Henry the Seventh and Elizabeth from the other family. So they were united at that time. Okay. The Tudors ruled the country for the next century, which saw many intellectual, political, and religious changes. We will now go to understand those changes. Now, Henry VII, second son, succeeded to the throne after his brother Arthur died, and to retain the alliance with Spain, Henry VIII had to marry his brother's widow كاثرين of Aragon. إذن إحنا هنري السابع ابنه الكبير آرثر توفى، فابنه آرثر كان متزوج من كاثرين from Aragon, and she was Spanish. So what happened after that? Henry VIII, okay, his brother, became the king لأنه Henry VII died, and his son Arthur, who was supposed to be his successor, died before his death. Then Henry VIII was the king of England, of course, because he wanted to keep the alliance with Spain. He had to marry Catherine of Aragon, اللي هي كانت أرملة أخوه. However, Henry VIII eventually grew tired of a wife who could not give him male heirs to the throne of England. Although they had a daughter, it was at that time unthinkable for a woman to rule the nation. Then Henry VIII was not satisfied with his marriage to Catherine because she couldn't give birth to a baby boy. Those who were the babies who were boys died actually at birth. So Henry VIII wasn't satisfied, and he considered this as actually a curse from God because he married the widow of his brother. So he decided to break up with Catherine, but that wasn't allowed at that time. So the church tried or rejected that. Hence, the church rejected that, and he insisted. He decided to change his actually type of religion or a group of religion from one side to another side. We will see that. So, Henry applied for dispensation from the Pope and broke completely with the papal power in 1534 when the Pope would not declare Henry's marriage to Catherine invalid on the grounds that she had been married to his brother. So he wanted to break up with her, saying that she was the widow of his brother, and that's why God cursed him and is not giving him boys. Okay, so what happened after that? In this way, after he broke up with the church, the Reformation, that is the reformation of the doctrines and principles of the Church of Rome, was hastened into England, which has then ripe for the intellectual ferment of the Renaissance, and England became a Protestant. So before that, England was Catholic, okay, but because the Catholic Church rejected to help him break up with Catherine, he changed or converted to Protestant, to become a Protestant. Now the Protestant had like a more tolerant views to religion, to people, to sciences, and to intellects. So that's why the the intellectual life started to flourish in England at that time. So because we said that this intellectual change was a ferment اللي هو الخميرة كان of the Renaissance لعصر النهضة, and England became a Protestant. So let's come to the Renaissance time. The Renaissance. What do you mean by Renaissance? The word is borrowed from French and means rebirth. So Renaissance means rebirth. So the word rebirth actually gives us a sign of something new, something totally different. So the usage of the term derives from the early belief about the Middle Ages as being ignorant, uncultured, and backward. The rebirth was therefore seen as learned, civilized, and progressive. Okay, so we would find that the Renaissance is a response or reaction to the Middle Ages. The people during the Middle Ages, nobody was caring about science. The church was exploiting people and imposing restrictions on their thinking and on their intellectuals. Okay, so the Renaissance came to change that and to take the people away from the spiritual world towards the secular but the highly educated and civilized society. So the Renaissance symbolized the beginning of a new era of art, rebirthing the classical models of ancient Greek and Rome periods while using the modern techniques. So yes, they would use the classical models, but they would also focus on more modern techniques in writing novels, writing plays, writing poems, and so on. So this is during the Renaissance. Now the Renaissance, which had its beginning in Italy in the late 13th and early 14th centuries, spread to other parts of Europe, finally coming to England in the 16th century. تخيلوا هي بدت في القرن ال13، احتاجت 300 سنة عشان تنتقل من إيطاليا لإنجلترا. As an interest in scholarship based on ancient Greek and Roman, learning and philosophy developed. An awareness of the human spirit's potential for improvement led to scientific, religious, and philosophical discoveries. So if you remember the Greek and the Roman people, many of them, they were philosophers, and they cared a lot about philosophy and understanding the nature of a human being. But with the church ruling and oppressing people, they prevented them from doing this. Now during the Renaissance time, the people came back to do the same thing that the Greek and Roman did. They started to discover scientific discoveries, religious and philosophical discoveries. The Renaissance spirit led to the discovery of the new word as well as that of the new faith and Protestantism. Okay, now the new word is America actually, because in the past the people in the Middle Ages thought that the whole world is just Europe. Okay, and no people but the European people are the elite race, and they are the only ones existing in the world. But with the Renaissance, and because the people started to think, to learn, and to try to discover, there was that led to the discovery of the new word, which is America. Okay, now there was a new faith, which is Protestantism. As I told you, Catholicism, it was very strict, but Protestantism was actually more tolerant. The period is closely associated with humanism, a secular movement. Secular movement يعني حركة دنيوية as opposed to religious, which aimed to ennoble or give dignity and nobility to man, to civilize him, and to make him aware of what he was capable of doing. Then in the previous religious era, they actually suppressed the man, prevented him from thinking, told him that you were born or created for a purpose, and you shouldn't question anything in this world. Okay, now with the Renaissance time, no, they focused more humanism. The man became of an importance, and he was actually encouraged to get educated and to become aware of his abilities and of his potential to do new things. Now let's come to poetry. That was the background in general, the political, the social, and most importantly the religious situation during the early Tudor period. Now let's move to poetry. Of course, before we go to poetry, Henry VIII, by the way, he got married to 6 wives, and most of them he killed them because he wanted the boy, and every time he couldn't break up with one of them, he would accuse her of something like adultery, الخيانة, for example, and then he would cut her head and marry the next one. Okay, so that's why he was actually very obsessed about his sexual life and about himself. There are many films and series, by the way, that you can find about Henry VIII. It was a horrible, he was a horrible man, actually, a horrible king. Okay, now let's, anyway, on the other side, we can go to literature and the Renaissance in literature, and we will find that there were changes in poetry. So poetry, instead of talking about rhymed and blank verse, now we will move to and the ballad. Of course, we talked about the ballad before that, and the epic. Now we will move to a more actually lyrical poem, which is called sonnet. Okay, the sonnet now is a new form of poems that occurred during the Renaissance times. Okay, now the word sonnet comes from the Italian word sonetto. Okay, so what is a sonnet? A sonnet is a type of 14-line poem. So the sonnet consists of 14 lines. Those 14 lines are divided into octave. Okay, the octave consists of 2 quatrains, making up a stanza of 8 lines. Okay, 2 quatrains, each quatrain 4 lines. The 8 lines together, they form the octave. The octave is after that followed by the sestet. The sestet, a stanza of 6 lines. The sonnets generally use a meter of iambic meter, and the sonnet has a set rhyme scheme. يعني في إلها قافية. إذا السونت هي نوع من أنواع القصائد مكونة من 14 سطر. ال8 أسطر الأولى عبارة عن 2 quatrains مقطوعتين الثمان أسطر مع بعضهم بيكونوا حاجة بنسميها أوكتاف مقدمة السونيت. بعد هيك سيستت اللي هو الست أسطر الباقية، وهذه السيستت اللي هي بتحمل الحل عادة أو الفهم للموضوع. The sonnets usually have meter، الوزن الشعري إلها iambic بنتاميتر إذا بتتذكروا تكلمنا عنها، اللي هي unstressed stressed foot. Okay, and we have 5 feet and follow a set rhyme scheme. في إلها اللي هو قافية محددة. Okay, we will look at this. Now let's come to the types of the sonnet. So we understood here what we mean by the sonnet. So what are the types of the sonnets? We have different types of the sonnets, but the original one is the Italian one, or the Petrarchan sonnet. It is called Petrarchan sonnet after it was named after Petrarch, the Italian poet. And it consists of 14 lines. This is the traditional one, 14 lines, 2 quatrains as octave, and as we said 6 lines as the sestet. Okay, and the rhyme scheme is A B B A A B B A. اذا الكواترنز التو كواترنز اللي هم الاوكتاف هي الرايم سكيم تبعتهم، قافيتهم حتكون الكواترن الاولى A B B A والكواترن الثانيه A B B A. Okay, while the sestet rhyme is C. Okay, let me see. C D E, like C D E D C E or C D C D C D. Okay, let's look at. We will look at an example. Okay, the octave. What is the purpose of the octave? المقدمة contains a problem. It contains a problem or a question. This problem is usually related to love, unrequited love or rejected love, or a question such as يعني أحيانا بتبدأ بسؤال Does she love me? This is the question. Okay, or this is how it is formed in some way else. Okay, the sestet contains the resolution. إذا الأوكتاف المقدمة حتكون فيها المشكلة، sestet resolution الحل. الحل طبعا مش بالضرورة يكون حل مشكلة، ولكن فهم معين، أو يعني الواحد يتوصل لفكرة إنه هي يعني يخفف من أثر المشكلة اللي عرضها. It almost always contains a turn which signals a shift in the poem's focus from problem to resolution. The turn comes at the very beginning of the sestet in the sonnet's 9th line. طبعا we are here talking about the traditional sonnet, the Italian sonnet. Okay, but later we will see that there were changes in the sonnets. Okay, now in the proposition of the octave, the poem establishes its dilemma, okay, and subject, the vanity of the poet's passion for his beloved. Then this is the dilemma or the subject. It is always the vanity or the unimportance of the poet's passion for his beloved. He loves a woman and she doesn't care about his love. This sonnet has an obvious turn in the 9th line. We will look at it, the phrase, but now I clearly see. Okay. In the sonnet, the example that we will see that the turn starts with the line that starts with but now I clearly see. يعني هو بيكون يشرح عن المعاناة اللي بعانيها بسبب رفض حبيبته لحبه لحد ما يصل للسيستت ويبدأ يحكي، يعني يصير عنده فهم للوضع. But now I clearly see. So with but it refers to the turn. The resolution in the sestet is that the words joy is but a fleeting dream. إذا هو وصل لفهم إنه المتعة في الحياة هي مجرد حلم سريع المرور. Okay. The sonnet employs the Petrarchan rhyme scheme of A B B A A B B A C D E D C E. So let's look at the example. So look at this. This is a Petrarchan sonnet. Yeah, who in rhymes dispersed the echoes here, of those sad sighs with which my heart I fed, when early youth my mazy wanderings led, fondly different from what I now appear. Okay, so notice that here we have here a and appear a, so they rhyme with each other. Fed, okay, because this is a, fed is b, and led b, so that's why we say a b b a. Now this should be actually repeated in the second quatrain. Fluttering twixt frantic hope and frantic fear, from those by whom my various style is read. I hope, if ever their hearts for love have bled, not only pardon but perhaps a tear. Okay, إذا أنا في عندي fear tear، في عندي red bled، إذا أجت مع here appear fear tear، بينما fed led red bled. Okay, now let's come to the sestet. So these are the 8 lines that we call them octave. Okay, now the 6 lines, the next 6 lines here are called sestet. But now I clearly see that of mankind. Okay, so in the sestet, the 6 lines, it starts with but now I clearly see that of mankind. But now, so this is the turn. Okay, long time I was the tale, once bitter thought, and self-approach with the frequent blushes teem, while of my frenzy shame the fruit I find, and sad repentance and the proof dear bought, that the word's joy but is but a fleeting dream. So notice here that you have thought, okay, so we said a b, okay, sorry, mankind, kind, so a and b. Now we have a new rhyme, so it is c, mankind, thought d, so a b c d e, team. Okay, now find mankind، إذا بنكررها اللي هي c، thought boat، إذا d، team dream، إذا e. Okay, so a b c d e, and here they are repeated. So this is the rhyme for the Petrarchan or the Italian sonnet. Okay, now let's come to the English sonnet. Thomas Wyatt and Earl of Surrey. Surrey is an area in England, and the Earl is like the ruler of Surrey or the Prince of Surrey, introduced the sonnet to the English language in the 16th century by translating the works of Petrarch from Italian and then introducing a new structure and rhyme scheme. So yes, they translated at the beginning to teach the people the Italian sonnet, but later they made the changes and created new structures and rhyme scheme that is actually related to the English sonnet. The 14 lines, we kept the 14 lines, we kept the iambic pentameter, but instead of having 2 quatrains as the octave, now we have 3 quatrains. Each quatrain has 4 lines, okay? And at the end, instead of having the sestet of 6 lines, we have only 2 lines as a couplet, okay? A 2-line couplet, and the rhyme scheme is different. Instead of saying A, B, A, B, B, A, and so on, we now have A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, G, G. Of course, this is not for all sonnets. After that, they made the changes, and they were actually out of poetic necessity, they made such changes. Now, there is a third type, which we will not talk about, but it's good to mention, Spenserian sonnets. So this is from Edmund Spenser. He actually created his own variation of the English sonnet, and he used a new rhyme scheme, A, B, B, C, C, D, E, E. So different from the English sonnet, which is actually the Shakespearean also sonnet. Okay. Now let's come to the themes in sonnets. As we said at the beginning, the most important theme of the sonnet is love and beauty. Okay, so love and beauty and expressing the feelings of the person towards the human beauty, which was seen as an outward sign of man's spirit striving for perfection. So the more you are beautiful, the more the sign is clearer that your spirit is striving for perfection. Now, in addition to the sonnets, okay, at that time there were the madrigal and the pastoral forms in order to enable the poet to express his feelings concerning love and beauty. But we are focusing here on the sonnets. So at that time we had sonnets, madrigal, and pastoral forms of poems, okay? Now, writing love poems to one's lady was okay. So it was actually a carryover from medieval France. Traditionally, the lover complained to his mistress, often imaginary, it could be imaginary mistress, not a real one, of his love for her and her cruelty. So the lover loves a mistress or a woman, but this woman doesn't actually accept his love and treats him cruelly. Okay, the mistress was usually fair of complexion. Look at actually the features of beauty or the characteristics of beauty during the Renaissance time. So the mistress is supposed to be of fair of a complexion. Complexion means the skin. Okay, fair it means white. Okay, with golden hair, small red mouth, pink cheeks, and beautifully white teeth. She played the cruel, haughty lady whose favors the lover sought in vain. So she was of great beauty, okay, and the lover tried everything to convince her to fall in love with him, but in vain. In vain, it means that she rejected that totally. Okay, now I will stop with this video, and in the next video, inshallah, I will look at examples of English or Elizabethan sonnets, because we will look at the English or Elizabethan because we will look at Shakespeare, and Shakespeare was during the Elizabethan period. Okay, so we will look at a sonnet written by Sir Thomas Wyatt, and a sonnet written by Henry Howard, Earl of Surrey, and two sonnets or three sonnets is written by Shakespeare. Okay, thank you very much for watching, and see you in the next video.